Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the Democrats had a meeting recently in which they tried to endorse a candidate for governor. We'll find out how that went. Imagine 7 Democratic candidates want to succeed Governor Rendell, and then we've got a legislative update on a bunch of important factors that might change the way the legislature functions, the popular financial literacy update. What more can I say? We'll be back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, I do know who replaced Governor Rendell. It was Governor Corbett. How'd I get that? When the host is a little clueless, you got to wonder about what's going on. At any rate, joining me as often is the case is John Micek. We're going to do a little reporter roundtable from the Harrisburg Patriot-News, and Kate Giammarise, she's with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and sitting next to me is Brittany Foster. She's the managing editor of the PoliticsPA website. All right, Britt, let's start with you. The Democrats had a meeting. They tried to get an endorsement. It didn't work. They ended up with no endorsement. What's the takeaway from that? The guy who got the most votes? I mean, go ahead, talk about that.
Well, there's 2 takeaways. There's 2 schools of thought on this, that because McCord didn't earn the full endorsement, that it was a loss. It was a total wash. But then there's a school of thought from the McCord campaign that says that they blew out every other contender, and it's a huge show of strength for him. It's a big surge. He took almost 50% of the votes. The Democratic committee requires 2/3.
2/3, right.
So he did fall short, but he doubled his nearest competitor, Allison Schwartz, in a show of great support from the Democratic establishment.
Now, John, back on the angle that we're dealing with the state treasurer, Rob McCord. He does, it looks like, have the lion's share of the union support and the lion's share of sort of the local party, Democratic Party apparatchiks, but not Philadelphia, which seems to be behind Congresswoman Schwartz. What's your take about where this race stands right now?
Well, if anyone tells you they know who's going to win the primary, they're lying to you. I mean, it's a wide open field, as you said at the top of the show.
You mean Ed Rendell's not going to win the primary?
I don't think so, unless he's giving up that cushy MSNBC gig to come out of retirement.
Good point.
But, Mr. McCord did come away with the majority of the vote in Saturday's slow-motion car crash of an endorsement meeting. But ask Jack Wagner how well that worked out for him in 2010, or Bob Casey how well the actual endorsement worked out for him in 2002. Historically speaking, the guy who takes the majority or who wins the endorsement doesn't always end up with the party's nomination.
That's correct.
So it could be a mixed blessing.
Good point.
But, I mean, the one thing that was true is that Rob McCord did outwork and out-hustle his competitors. I mean, before we came into the studio this afternoon, PSEA announced that they'd endorsed him as well. So there's another big union endorsement getting ticked off right there. So it looks like, a lot of establishment forces are aligning behind him. That said, let's see what happens with the primary.
Yeah, Kate, one of the things is that, and there have been a couple of forums, they're going to be, it looks like, a forum a day almost for the primary to see who run against Governor Corbett. I got that right. But it's hard to discern the issue differences that matter to voters. How are you all dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, if I could just also add to piggyback off what John was saying, I mean, I don't know, to me, what happened on Saturday, that's just the party establishment. That's not what's the average Democratic primary voter. Like, it doesn't say, what the average Democratic primary voter cares about. And you're right that there's not huge ideological differences, at least among the front runners. So I don't know. It's hard to say.
We have two women in the race. We saw how important the women's vote was in electing Kathleen Kane, the new Attorney General. I guess I can't keep saying new. Now she's into the office more than a year. We've got 2 women candidates. Was there any sort of gender appeal that was evident there? I mean, to what extent do you think that plays out?
I thought it was actually very refreshing at State Committee that there wasn't really a pitch on women's issues. There wasn't the assumption that women will base their votes on gender issues, and the females in the state will split their votes between Schwartz and McGinty. I like to think that there are other more important issues, and I think that came across in the forum on Friday night.
All right, we're going to run to a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to turn to John. He may have a comment to make on this, but I want to also talk about changes in the legislature that could have a huge effect on Corbett, should he win re-election, and what the structure of the legislature will look like, particularly in the House. This is important to the legislative agenda that moving forward in the next couple of years. particularly for Republicans. We'll be back with that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation, educating citizens and business leaders about important public policy issues and civic affairs. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to the program, Journalist Roundtable. This past week, the Speaker of the House, Sam Smith from Puxatawny, remember that? That whatever that little animal is, I'm going to get into trouble now. We have one in Lancaster County as well. We have them all over the state. We're going to have 6 more weeks of winter as if we didn't notice or know. Here's the point. He said he will not seek re-election to the House, which means the speakership is open. Big implications, John Micek.
Yeah, I mean, it's a giant power vacuum opening up in the House. No one will feel it more keenly than Governor Tom Corbett. I mean, it was Speaker Smith who helped him get his transportation funding plan over the goal line. So that was a huge push from the Speaker that led to that moving in the House. The Governor came out the other day when Speaker Smith announced his retirement. He said he will remain engaged through June. Translation: when we get a budget passed.
Good point. So
if he can stay plugged in until like midnight on June 30th, and if he wants to kip off to the beach, that's completely fine. But the fascinating thing now is Sam Smith has been in for 27 years, I think, and he's to the manor born. His father, Representative Snuffy Smith, which is the most fantastic name in Pennsylvania politics, had the seat before him out there in Jefferson County. It now opens a real power vacuum in the House. Presumably, House Majority Leader Mike Turzai, who's the sort of second-ranking member of the House Republican leadership, may make a play for it. But there are any number of players.
There's a big difference here. Sam Smith, my humble judgment, sort of a pragmatic conservative. If Mike Turzai, he's more of a Tea Party ideological conservative. I mean, does that make a difference, as John points out?
I think you're right. I mean, Turzai's name is definitely high on the list, but he is would be a more conservative member of the leadership. And some people I was talking to yesterday said they don't know if he would be a great fit with some of the Southeast Republicans, or maybe,
But that's the division anyway, right?
Wouldn't be wanting him, yeah.
You hear guys like Mike Verb from Montgomery County, his name bubbling
up.
Or Bill Adolph, the appropriations chairman.
Yeah.
Dave Reed,
from Indiana County, another sort of more doctrinaire conservative too. Because let's face it, broad swaths of that caucus have become more conservative since 2006. You can't deny that.
No doubt about it.
The other interesting point is, and for our viewers in this neck of the woods, is that it now opens up some possibility of members of the South Central Caucus to move into leadership. Stan Saylor, who's the whip from York County, is there. Guys like Ron Marsico from Dauphin County.
But any way you cut it, this conceivably could have a profound effect on how the Republican caucus functions, correct?
Absolutely. I think we're going to see a lame duck speaker here that doesn't have the ability to make the deals that he did in the transportation debate. But I think we're also going to see sort of leadership auditions from a lot of other Republicans coming up and showing their leadership style and what they can do.
Is that what you're saying? No done
deal?
Well,
I think Turzai is the heir apparent, but I think we're going to see other people vying for Turzai's seat.
All right. I want to run to a break. When we come back, there's a big issue about payroll deductions that get taken out by the employer, in this case for school districts and the state, that unions then use to, for operating money. It's been going on, I think, since the 1970s when we first got Act 195, the state's collective bargaining law. I'm going to start with Kate. It's pretty controversial. Governor Corbett has shied away. I'm going to ask them what they think about that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Journalist Roundtable time. We're going to talk about an issue that is certainly big disagreement between business and labor. It's called paycheck protection. Talk about that. What's that all about?
Well, so this is about certain folks are challenging the longstanding practice of dues, union members' dues being automatically deducted from their paycheck. There's some bills in both chambers that would put an end to that practice, and unions say that would, cripple their ability to do their job, to serve their members, and to, do any kind of lobbying efforts on behalf of their members. And there's definitely been a lot of attention to this issue, but let me just say, I think for now, this legislation doesn't really appear to be going anywhere, but both sides are certainly using it to fire up their bases,
that's a great
to
point.
get everyone fired up, to raise money. The gubernatorial candidates are certainly beating the drum on this issue. So
probably nowhere?
Well, not at the moment.
Yeah. John, let me turn to you. One of the aspects of this that I think is pretty important has to do with Governor Corbett's position. I thought he said a couple of weeks ago that he would sign it, but boy, he's not. I've never heard him give a speech on that.
He really split the hair on it. He said he would sign it if it came to him, and then when they followed up and asked him, well, would this be something you'd actively seek out? He said, well, this is something people are definitely interested in. So he's not putting any political capital behind it, and sensibly, Terry, Governor Corbett has, early on in his administration, he signed those union deals, he got the contracts done, he had labor placated for 4 years. He didn't go the scorched earth path of, say, John Kasich in Ohio or Scott Walker in Wisconsin. The last thing the governor wants to do right now is pick a fight with labor. That said,
you think it just sort of energizes the other side, sort of like voter ID, regardless of whether it's popular or not. It does energize the other side.
The last thing he wants to do is give Democrats another reason to come out to the polls, and this would certainly be one of them.
That's a good point. All right, before you all go, you've been covering these hearings, we're now in appropriation hearings in the legislature, and I know it's they're important, but is there anything that's come out of these at all that any of you can talk about?
I think Corbett has presented a very interesting budget that provides funding for the kinds of programs like education that the Democrats want funded, but they're not really pleased with the way that he's funding it with these short-term fixes. So they're sort of trapped between, do we attack this and lose the funding for the things that we want, or do we let it slide and give Corbett a really great budget to go into election season with?
I sort of pushed Secretary Zogby when he was on the program, Secretary of the Budget, who's the main player in this, and he thinks I asked him about these short-term fixes, whether they're counting on money from Healthy PA, 4.5% growth in revenue. That is somewhat problematic. I'm not getting into whether it will work or won't work. We'll find out ultimately. But that's emerged, Kate, as a pretty big issue right now, correct?
The Healthy PA?
No, that as well as the whole issue
of the one-time fixes and stuff. And certainly a lot of people have described this as an election year budget. With not trying to upset people on education and that type of thing.
John, your take on that?
It is premised on some fairly rosy assumptions, and I'm following the Healthy PA, the Medicaid expansion debate fairly closely. The governor's seeking federal waivers to change to shift 500,000 people from Medicaid into private insurance. The controversial proposal requiring people to look for work while receiving benefit. No other state has gotten that. So if that doesn't come together, these people might not end up with coverage.
The revenue they project that they're going to save.
Exactly right.
Great update. All right, popular financial literacy update. Those credit cards and all that stuff going on with Target and some of the big box stores. We're going to find out how to protect yourself in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back to the program. Well, I'll tell you what, all that we've been reading about lately are card breaches that are in the news. We're going to get to the bottom of that and what you can do. Joining me, as also often is the case, is Pat Conway. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, and Maria LaVelle. She's the CEO of the Westmoreland Community Federal Credit Union and chairman of the board, right? So you're the boss? So I have to listen to every... Okay, I got it. We can do that. College president, I have a president. I have to listen. Yeah, right. All right. But seriously, every day it seems like I've heard something in the news about a credit card breach. Give us a quick summary of where that all stands.
Sure. Thanks, Terry. Target obviously is the most high-profile case, unfortunately. But Neiman Marcus, Michaels, there's unfortunately been sort of a string of these breaches in the public eye recently. But from the financial services perspective, I think what we want to assure the public is nothing is safer than paying with a debit or credit card.
Right.
And so, these breaches can occur. They do occur at the merchant level. But there's zero liability for the customers. So most people are carrying debit and credit cards, and they're very safe overall to use.
Now, just before we turn to the types of fraud we're talking about here, is this mostly inside jobs? I mean, I've paid a little bit of attention to it for obvious reasons. Inside, outside, how's it? Do we have any idea, or isn't it that important? Just do the right things to protect yourself?
No, I think there's been some of both. I think in the Target case that it was a vendor. It was an outside vendor. But unfortunately, in this day and age, with cybersecurity being a concern, there's more ways for people to try to penetrate, this information. And, but again, I think overall, when you look at the volume of transactions, using credit cards and debit cards
and
is
we can't
very
get
safe.
an email. I mean, every day there's some phishing going on. I get the email all the time, and that's why you have the delete. I guess I should put them in my send to spam, or send to phishing, whatever your email provider allows. All right, what are these types of plastic fraud that we should be on the alert for?
The most simple one is simply somebody stealing your credit card, your debit card. So we always say treat it like cash, protect it in your wallet. Don't keep your PINs in your wallet along with your debit and your credit card. As you mentioned, phishing. Phishing is very common, that it's getting the information through the email. The Trojan virus, where, they're getting your information, but you don't even know it because it's a virus on your computer. They're, getting all your logins, all your passwords. That's another form of it. We see a lot of the Canadian lottery, where members get a check in the mail and they respond to it and they have to pay a fee and give their debit card information over the phone. We always say you get nothing for free. So if you didn't play the lottery, 9 times out of 10, you didn't win the lottery.
Right, and we should be changing our PIN numbers frequently, right? That's what I also hear. And don't use 2222 and 4321, right? And one, go ahead.
Or even your common information. A lot of people use their birth dates because it's simple to remember.
That's true.
But most people that get your information, they know what your birth date is, or your child's birth date. So we try to say use something that's not common.
Yeah.
That if somebody gets your cards, they won't be able to utilize it.
Yeah. Now, something we talked about before, and a lot of the, fortunately, media outlets now are doing some good consumer updates. I think that's all helpful to everybody. But one of the things that I think has to do with how frequently you should be going online if you do your banking online and get online with your credit cards. What's your recommendation about that? Twice a week, 3 times, or either one of you?
As often as possible, wouldn't you say, Maria?
Absolutely. We say check your information as often as possible. And if there's something on there that just doesn't sit right with you, that you didn't do, reach out to your financial institution quickly. Because it happens pretty quick. As soon as somebody gets your information, they're off running.
No, I get it. Okay, you mentioned before zero exposure. Is that completely zero, or is it usually $25? $50 is something that strikes in my. I recall. Is that right? Is that about what the liability is?
I think in one case there's a $50 limit, but generally speaking, if you report your card being stolen very quickly, you're going to be fine. So generally speaking, the consumer has no liability. The financial institutions and the issuers of the cards back that up. You could argue that really the merchant, the retailer, is where the problem has occurred. But the financial institution and the card issuer does, back that up.
Right.
So from a consumer standpoint, if you're checking your accounts frequently and just, being cautious, paying with credit cards and debit cards is very safe.
And some people, I mean, I know just some folks I know, they just they pull them out and they got like 10 or 15 credit cards. I guess that's okay. I'm not going to tell people what the credit cards they should have, but you think, do you really need that many? But that's another issue for another time. All right, we talked about some of these early steps to protect yourself.
Simplest way is to check your credit report.
Okay.
There is a website, it's called annualcreditreport.com. It's free. That is a consumer site that was set up by the federal government. You can get a free credit report from all 3 bureaus once a year.
Annualcreditreport.com. You all got that out there?
So check it. Sign up for alerts. All major card issuers have account alerts. So if you can say if a transaction's over a certain dollar amount, send me a text, send me an email. Those work. And then you get that email immediately, and then you get online, you check, and then you notify your financial institution.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Online safety, utilize sites that are secure. If it doesn't sit right, if they're asking you the wrong questions, so security numbers and all that, then get off that site and try to pick up the phone and call to place your order or whatever. Just protect your information. It's simple as that. Get a shredder. Yeah. Shred your credit cards.
My wife has one, may I point out. We have a shredder.
That's great.
Shred your information.
All right, let's go to the one other point. So all of a sudden you find out you're a victim. What do?
Well, the first thing you do is report it. So if your card was stolen, report it to the issuer, call your bank, report it to the authorities, law enforcement as quickly as possible. And I think that's the most important thing, because then they can, track your account. They can put a hold on the account. So that really, I think the most important thing you do is react quickly. Keep an eye on your account online, particularly with online access now. Knowing if there's a problem, if you're watching your account, either your card could be missing and stolen, you've got to report it, or if you're seeing something on your statement, whether it's online or in paper, a purchase that wasn't made, you've got to report that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I noticed that you have here in information that you helping me out with. There's a consumer gov ID theft file online complaint. What's that about? Actually, I'm hearing about that. Maybe we talked about that before, and I just don't recall.
You file the online identity theft, and they help you walk you through the process. And there is a fraud alert that goes onto your credit report, so that if a financial institution pulls your credit report, they see fraud alert. That way, they're going to take an extra step to verify that is actually you sitting in front of them applying for that loan. Also, contact PennDOT to let them know that maybe your ID has been stolen and your driver license has been stolen, so they can put actual fraud alerts on your account there. So it's definitely just reaching out to everybody and letting them know. Financial institution, the credit bureaus, PennDOT, file the police report. That is so important, because that's going to help you get your everything back together. And I know that's a time process, but file the report, because that's definitely a process that you need to do.
All right, well, look, this has been a wonderful update. I think you've provided some really important suggestions for our viewers. Bottom line is, this is increasing, and it seems like it's going to increase, and we have to protect ourselves. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.